Good morning, good evening,
Well,
good afternoon. Hey, Jack. Welcome to Bitcoin and Beyond. I am Melanie Carstens, and I am super excited to be sitting here with my good friend Jackbinswitch today. Hi, Jack, and welcome.
hello, Melanie. You'll have to forgive me if I fall back into calling you Good Kitty because there's just a lot of history there, just knowing you as Good Kitty for so many years now. But
I know, I know.
it's good to be here, and I love the idea of being on the show. I'm honored that you asked, and yeah, let's get to it.
Yeah, it's super excited. It's interesting you say that because um, I have known you probably for nearly 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and I pretty much don't know that much about you. Through all the years that we've been on spaces together and DM'd, I do know that you come from a background as a nurse or medic of sorts. So I do want to sort of touch on that. I know you as a man of faith, a Christian man, a father, a loving husband, as a total degen, as a Bitcoin and Stacks lover, um, better than the best of us, I guess. And and then obviously we want to talk about Roo and runes and Stacks Invaders. So there's kind of a lot for us to unpack here. So let's kind of just dive right in. Let's start at the beginning. Where did it begin for young Jack? No,
In crypto or in general?
young Jack. So young Jack, let's talk a little bit about, okay, maybe a little bit, where you're from. I think for most Americans, your accent probably gives it away.
Right.
And then you refer so often to this sort of nursing background. So kind of before crypto, before Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana. I grew up in a place where like people would give you the shirts off their back, and even when you didn't realize that, like, the people you're surrounded with might have not had too much. They were still it was still that kind of place where people would do anything for you. um it was a I had a good upbringing. I enjoyed you know I enjoyed my childhood and my formative years. I
Were there any siblings? Did you have
Yeah,
any?
I have half siblings. I
Okay.
was I have two half brothers and a half sister, and I was the youngest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's so cute. So you were like the little young Jack of the family.
Yep. Yeah.
That's so cute. Is your
And
real name Jack?
no, that's my when for some reason before I even got into crypto, I figured I'd need a pen name someday, and
Yeah.
um, Jack was it chosen because my very best friend in life, his dad was named Jack, and he was like a pretty important part of my life. And
Okay.
my favorite author is C.S. Lewis, and all his friends called him Jack. So that was like where Jack
That's how
came
it
about.
happened. Yeah,
Yeah.
and for those who don't know why Jack said a pen name, he's referring to the fact that he's a writer. So we'll get there as well. That's another thing we've got to add on our list. So that's why the pen name. Okay, so that's kind of all right. So let's go. We're going to jump around. You're going to have to stop me because I'm naughty like that. So we were young Jack growing up in New Orleans. The Lot Lamaki, as we would call it in South Africa, the young one of the family.
Yeah. And yeah, I wound up um marrying. Actually, I've been married twice. I'm on my second marriage. I did much better the second time. The
Thank
first
goodness.
time, I married my high school sweetheart, not knowing enough about life to make good decisions. And believe it or not, actually, my first career was law enforcement, and my
Oh,
dad was yeah, my dad was a pretty legendary lawman where I'm from, and it put a big impression on me. And I did that until I hurt my back. And I was pretty young. I wound up with a pretty catastrophic back injury that took me into a place where I could no longer do that kind of work. And not long after that, we had an event called Hurricane Katrina that completely just upended, our lives. And that's the end of the New Orleans chapter of my story.
Really? So did you leave at that point?
Oh yeah. And I had 2 young kids at the time.
Are these from so were you still in your first marriage at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
And had 2 young kids at the time, babies, honestly. And we lost everything. So I figured in a fresh start, we weren't going to fresh start in a place where they could potentially lose everything again. That was the rationale.
At this point, were you still in law enforcement, or had the back injury happened before Hurricane Katrina?
That was before. That was pretty devastating. Like I've lived with chronic pain every day of my life since then. And chronic pain is one of those things that it'll put you in the ground or it'll give you superpowers, right? And you vacillate on that spectrum, and that becomes your a big part of who you become.
Yeah.
And so,
I totally resonate with that, because I got into crypto because of the fact that I was in chronic pain and bedridden. So, and I always, my sort of feeling on it is it can either become a hurdle or a crutch, and you got to figure that out, Right. So yeah, I must say I relate to you on that quite deeply.
It was cool because, well, to the extent that any of this can be cool, that I shortly after Katrina, my father got very sick. And originally, where we were going to try to restart our lives, we were getting established there. Found out my dad was sick. Come back to help look after him. Start spending a lot of times in hospitals and doctors' offices, and in the meantime, for me, I found like a healthcare provider that was very, very helpful. Like way more help than I had ever gotten previously. And it's like anything else, everybody brings their own talents and selves into whatever their occupation is. And no 2 providers of any service are the same. Right. And I was able to get a lot of help dealing with my pain, to the point where I was like, well, I was able to get back on my feet pretty good. Way more than I thought I could. You literally take things a day at a time, sometimes a moment at a time, when you live like that. And I wound up getting myself as good as I could. And I was like, you know what? I want to be able to do for other people what this guy's done for me. And so that's when I decided to go into healthcare.
Wow. Amazing how things kind of, that silver lining. There's also a thing I wrote about when my mom passed away called The Gift of Grief. And it's how, again, these things can propel you into things that you didn't know how far you could be pushed, and you didn't know you could accomplish what you actually were capable of accomplishing if you're not faced with these things. Okay, wow, what a story. So you, at this point, because what I'd love to also talk to you about, maybe as we move on, is kind of pain management. And I think because it's something that, a lot of people don't talk about, and kind of this confusion as to how you do manage pain. I've heard you speak about Big Pharma in previous occasions, and I know we kind of have the same feelings there as well. So I think it's something interesting as well for people to listen to,
No, cool. So like the Band-Aid when it comes to pain management is typically narcotic pain therapy, right? Pain medications, and that really is a band-aid, and it has a lot of drawbacks. In this country, especially, we've seen a population ravaged by, you know, the use and abuse of narcotic pain medicine, and so it's really not, it's not an answer, right? Um, it's not like narcotic pain medications are great for, like, for instance, if you have to have a surgery and you having this very acute pain, and you have so many days until, to just, you need something to help, put that pain on the side while your body's healing. That's a fantastic use case for them. And even in that case, some people, depending on their biochemistry and their personality, they could wind up with a problem if they're not careful.
Yeah.
But really, my experience has led me to the belief that dealing with pain becomes for me, a spiritual matter and a mental game.
Yeah.
It becomes and there's a lot of fascinating research about the connection that gets made with chronic pain patients, and it's massively associated with mental state. It creates like this negative feedback loop of, feeling bad, getting depressed, feeling worse, getting more depressed, and it people get stuck in that cycle. And so it really is a big mental game until better therapies maybe come along that can fix it. And I mean, there's other procedures that people can try for various different it can be effective for different things like nerve blocks and so forth. Surgery, especially when you're dealing with the spine, is one of those things that's always a last resort, or it should be. Any surgery really should be a last resort, but especially when you're dealing with your spine, because a lot of times people come out as bad as they were before, and sometimes worse. It's a real crap. You're dealing with all of these nerves and signals and hormones and all of these things, and there's no like diagnostic machine that can show someone, this right here, if you fix this, it'll fix everything else.
But you know what it is, Jack? It's like what I think about everything. We're like guinea pigs, and we're always going to be guinea pigs, because unless somebody gets to a point where they go, guess what? We've reached the pinnacle of medicine, or we've reached the pinnacle of wealth management, whatever. Then we can say, okay, everybody, awesome, stand in line, have your pinnacle of health pill, and you're healthy. You're good to go. But the fact of the matter is, if you go back 100 years in medicine and you think about how many guinea pigs there have been along the way to get us to be here, to be moving into the kind of health. So, you're actually, there's this like, don't you think, like a false sense of like, oh, I'm safe when I'm in hospital, or I'm safe when I'm on these tablets because I'm going to get better. And it's like, yeah, not so much.
1,000,000%. And this is especially true in the United States, where medicine is more about symptom management, not so much curing anything. Western medicine is fantastic for a few things. It's fantastic for trauma, like say you get in a bad vehicle accident or a gunshot wound or something like that. Western medicine is fantastic. It's also fantastic for sepsis. When you get an infection so bad that the infection is literally in your blood, and that becomes a life-threatening condition. Western medicine is very, very good at treating sepsis. Past that, though, with maladies and disease process, there's a lot left to be desired, and really look forward to a solution where that's concerned. And I think we're on the verge of some good solutions. It's just a matter of whether we want to move at the speed of regulation or technology, right? And I think the closer we get to moving at the speed of technology, the quicker we'll see, better treatment for people in general.
Yeah, I'm reading at the moment about ayahuasca and iboga and sort of hallucinogenics, DMT. I'm kind of just, I get obsessive about topics and then I have to know everything about them.
Same.
So that, I just kind of started going, on that. And it's one of the interesting quotes that one of the authors said was, it's almost a violation of human rights that I can't choose what to put in my body. And the fact that I can, and I was having this, I have a young son, and cannabis is legal here in South Africa. And there's obviously a lot of talk about shrooms and, THC, CBD, all this stuff. And you can also, in the malls, there are these CBD stands, because CBD isn't really even it's not even a drug, and well, not here and not in my mind. Anyway, so we're walking past and my son goes past and he says, is that lady selling drugs in the shops? So I sort of went back a few steps. I sort of know her, and I just said to her, I just want to show my son around the thing and explain to him, there's drugs. When you go into a pharmacy, you are at a drug dispensary. It's like, that's what it's called. It's drugs. So the term is kind of loosely thrown about in strange ways, like those are illegal and those are non-legal. Those are from plants. Those are from chemicals. It all gets a bit confusing. And one of the things she said, what was interesting, she said, look, take him. There's another store in the other mall, and they've got a microscope, and you can actually have a look at the plant crystals and all that, and they sort of show how it heals. And, so I think, I do think we are on a path towards kind of discovering these healing properties of these, plant medicines.
Oh, you've been rediscovering. There's a lot that has been lost, but
that's what I mean. It's a total lost. I'm close friends with a plant healer. Strangely enough, with the last Western doctor I saw, I was taken into hospital on my way out. I had a near-death experience. It was a time. My husband even says that he asked me if I think that night, it's almost like I went and something else came back. It was this very weird night. Okay. But the last doctor I saw after that said, look, science can't help you, like legit. So we can't make your pain go away. And a week later, a woman I knew, I'd known her for a long time, but she came to me and she said, look, not everybody knows this about me, actually hardly anybody, and I don't charge, but I'm a healer. And she took me on a healing journey, but through plant medicine. And she kind of speaks a lot about that, about how much information has been lost and just wiped out, along with a lot of our history, obviously, and all sorts of other things.
Well, we'll take one of the things that I use, for pain is called DMSO. The FDA in this country has known about DMSO since the 1960s, and it's great for pain, and it's good for several other things, and it's not considered legal, right? Like you can use it on livestock, you can buy it as a solvent. So and that's just like the tip of the iceberg, right? So no, there's a lot of information out there, and I do believe that we have everything available in nature we need to to heal our illnesses when they come about.
Dude, how else did we last for so many fucking millions of years before we came along? It's this whole like, oh, we can, we here, we're going to do it. And it's like, no, we lived for billions and billions. In fact, you're standing here in your big pharma suit because of the billions of years that we got stronger, So it's so weird. Everything's so weird, but that's why, thank God for the open internet and thank God for Bitcoin, because if there's one way that we can finally go back to hopefully opening up information to everybody, right?
And that's really the value proposition of Bitcoin. It's a big part of it. You know, we've grown up almost like there was a movie that came out in the 90s called The Truman Show, right?
Yes.
And we've it
I mean, what are the 90s?
right? We grew up in a constructed reality. Um and not like in a conspiracy theory sense. It's just like, here's the information that you get. This is your information. This is the approved information. Don't worry about all the rest of the information. And so, you
It's
know,
crazy.
having a decentralized network that is immutable, not only is it good for people to be able to transact with one another, but it's also, it makes the transmission of information unstoppable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And building upon that is part of, you know, why I've stuck around for so long in this space, because there's, Bitcoin is a tool that can help, make the world a better place. I fundamentally believe that.
Yeah, that is for sure. All right, so you were newly moved. You didn't say where. I don't know if you want to say where you kind of, because the last we picked up on your story, your dad was ill.
Right.
You had decided at that point that you were going to move into healthcare, and you had, as far as this is where I'm in the story in my head, you've got 2 children, you've married your childhood sweetheart, and you've decided to go into healthcare, and you've moved because Hurricane Katrina, biatch, ruined everything.
Right. Yeah. And my
Take us
first,
from there.
my first marriage didn't work out, and I'll spare everyone the details, but I will tell people in the audience, especially young men out there, and this is applicable to young women as well, to the extent that they pay attention to crypto stuff. Um, you're an anomaly, Mel.
I am, but I'm not a young woman, but I'll take it. More like an older lady.
One of the things you need to learn is that, if you pick up on something that's a red flag with a potential partner, you need to understand, is this something I can live with? Because you can disavow yourself of any illusions that you can fix it.
Yes.
We do not have the ability to fix other people, right? And
Yes, and niggle becomes a massive scratch.
right, and you can't, right, and who you marry is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make in your life. There's several very important things that you can do in your life, and who you marry is one of the most important ones. And unfortunately, it did not work out. I was not happy about that. That's not anything that a loving father wants his children to experience. But the good news is that I met a wonderful woman at a much more wise time in my life, and found like my missing puzzle piece,
Amazing.
And so together we have 6 children. And
Wow.
yeah,
So you took those 2 and you made another 4.
I wound up with 3. So we had 3 and 3.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All
Yeah.
right, there we go.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That is a nice big family to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, I'm kind of cut out for crypto because, at a young age, you lose everything to a natural disaster. And then still at a young age, you lose everything in a divorce. And then, you find yourself, with a large family to take care of. And so things, you tend to view things a little bit different, when it comes to things like risk versus reward, right?
Yeah. That's the beauty. My dad was a serial entrepreneur, and he said to me, what the beauty of it is when I fail, that's the last of my worries. It's exciting. I'll just go and start something new. So there's a wonderful thing about losing everything. My dad taught me is it is not going to be the end of anything or the beginning of anything. It's just all the same thing called life. So not to let those things knock you down. And I think, people also who go through um even a tough market with crypto, all that, you just keep going. It's the story with everything. It's the people who step out, or, like anybody who's ever really lost money in crypto, 99% of those are the people who've taken the money out. They're not here. That's how they've lost. All right, so how did you sort of come across crypto Bitcoins? When
2017, I
Okay.
had, in my career, I had progressed to where I was, um, you know, the person in charge of the clinical department for a hospital, and I was working extraordinarily long hours. Um, and in healthcare, like what I really wound up liking the most is like looking after older people. Older
Mhm.
people get kind of a raw deal in in
Yeah.
in their life if situations don't pan out right. And I was like, man, I'm working so much, I'm working so hard, um, so many hours. Like, I'm just do this for myself. And I developed a model for an assisted living type business for the elderly, and
Mhm.
it was my first time trying business. And I went in undercapitalized, and everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong, as it wants to do. And
Mm.
I found myself in a situation where I'm like, great, like I'm done. I have, I've lost my investment. I have to get back to work, and I need to make the kind of money that I was making before. So I started travel nursing, which is a pretty lucrative thing to do in this country. Um, and my very first contract, I had to go, you know, hundreds of miles away from everybody to go stay for 12 weeks. And I had a lot of downtime. And it was at this, I had heard about Bitcoin prior to this. Um, I used to see Max Keiser talk about it quite a bit. Um, I'd read a couple things on the internet about it, missed some opportunities to mine Ethereum and get some very cheap Bitcoin. But I was so caught up at that time with the process of losing my dad and everything. I didn't really have any bandwidth, and it was during this downtime where I was like, okay, I need money, as much as I can. I've got taxes to pay. Um, this Bitcoin thing looks like there's something to it, and that's when I started, in that moment. And I didn't know very much about it. Politically, I'm kind of a libertarian, kind of an anarchist. So like I already was pretty familiar with the ideas that like central
Yeah.
banking and fiat money were a problem.
Mm.
Um, I'd never really, but I was still in Bitcoin for probably that first year before I fully connected how Bitcoin solves the central banking
Mm.
and fiat money problem.
Mhm.
That first year, I was just like completely immersed, not having any idea what to do, you know. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to do anything constructive here, I have to learn how to trade. So if I have to learn how to trade, that means I have to learn how to read price charts. Um, and it was during that time period where I really started to understand the why for Bitcoin.
Mm. Yeah, amazing. I love that that everybody has such a, to me, I mean, one thing I probably would love to write one day is little snippets of like your Bitcoin discovery moment or your Bitcoin discovery story, because it's one of the things I just find that people are so passionate about, and when they get it like it's it changes them forever. You know, it's like a bizarre experience to kind of get to that point where there's very few things I've found in my life that can sort of connect you to something that's been, like you said, you kind of knew there was a problem, but it was like somebody just unlocks that key and goes, well, hey, here's something that solves it, and your life changes. You know, it's beautiful stories that are always attached to those. So that's something we could maybe write.
Yeah, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Once you can't, yeah, you can't unsee it. All right, so 2017, you sort of getting into traveling as somebody in the healthcare that's traveling. You've discovered Bitcoin. All right, let's fast forward to Stacks and how that came across your radar.
So back then, you know, we're on Stacks now, and everyone knows about this idea of DeFi on Bitcoin and all of these different things that we can do on Bitcoin and want to do on Bitcoin. Back then, you know, Bitcoin was just this thing. The thing that you could actually do things with was Ethereum, right? And so I wound up spending a lot of time in the Ethereum ecosystem. And you know, at some point I heard some people talking about Stacks, and I always paid attention to like Twitter and stuff to see, you know, if you could get any alpha, any edge from it. And I'm like, Stacks, huh? So the first thing I do is I check the price chart. And at the time, Stacks had printed a high, and it looked like it was going down. It was going to go down. I'm like, okay, I'm not buying at that price right now anyway. So I'll just store that in the back of my mind. And you fast forward a few months, and it looked like a good place to get an entry. So I'm like, okay, let me learn about Stacks. And when I started reading, what I put together is like, oh, this is Ethereum for Bitcoin. Okay, that makes sense. You know, I can now use Bitcoin and its hard money and take the best part of Ethereum, which is its smart contract functionality, and you can combine these things. And this is going to be huge. Like, this is definitely, so I was all in. At that point, I'm like, Stacks. Like, this is alpha. This is where I need to be.
But that's another thing that when you see it, you can't unsee it with Stacks. Right. It's like, it's so goddamn obvious.
Yep.
Why is not everybody buying all the Stacks?
Yeah. And, you know, so like the first thing you do, you know, when you're kind of like a retail degen kind of guy, you start following Stacks accounts on social media. You start trying to find the Discords. You start seeing what's there. And Stacks was still so new. There wasn't a whole lot here yet. There was some NFTs. There was Alex. There was StackSwap, which was a decentralized exchange. But the community that was here, you being a part of it that back then, was so refreshing. Like, it was a completely different story from anything I'd experienced in this space prior to that. You know, Bitcoin maxis have a personality problem by and large, and an unearned sense of superiority. You know, Ethereum is just like the Wild West, right? Like, you're just like, you feel, I once said it was like, it reminded me of that scene from Star Wars where Obi-Wan Kenobi takes Luke Skywalker into the cantina on the desert planet Tatooine, and like, he's like, it's a scum of high, you know, it's a hive of scum and villainy, right? And like, that was my experience in Ethereum, you know, for the most part. And Stacks was totally different. Like, these people understood Bitcoin, and they were like decent people, and they were like trying to take the technology that was developed by Stacks and take the hard money that is Bitcoin and make cool things, you know? And
Mm.
that's what I was like, okay, this is it. This is where I need to be. So really, the community is probably what's kept me here more than any other aspect, because
Mm.
if you look strictly for where can I go make the quickest dollar, um, there's always things that pop up that you can go immerse yourself in and take a chance and everything. But um, I was never someone who was really cynical about crypto. Like I got it. Like I was a true believer. I'm like, no, this is it. Like we can use this stuff to make a better world.
Mm.
And I still believe that, like, of every place I've experienced in this in the crypto ecosystem, Stacks is the community and the builders most dedicated to fulfilling that. And
Yeah.
so I've remained.
Yeah, totally. It is, man. It's just, I think everybody who's in here says it, who stays around. I think it's the, um, Balaji's network states. And that's also another thing. I had the same feeling when I read about Stacks and this, first Bitcoin. It was just like, okay, that's the first obvious thing. Then there was Stacks, and it was like, oh my God, yes, that is so obvious. And then I read the network state, and I was like, oh my God, like put these things together,
Right.
and voila, anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
that same thing happened to me. Zero Authority DAO, Zero and Hodl, they introduced me to the network state, and I read it, and yeah, I know
it's like
exactly.
it's a full on lights on moment. It's like learning to read all over again. It's kind of like Bitcoin is learning, Stacks is learning to speak. Bitcoin's the alphabet, Stacks is learning to speak, and
Right.
the network stake is learning to read. It's kind of like it all just goes, okay, and hang on, now it can function to
Right.
me. Um, but yeah, so what was your first NFT that you bought?
Oh wow. Okay, so um, I came to Stacks. I really didn't. I didn't pay too much attention to NFTs. I always liked tokens more, you know. Um,
Right.
and so I didn't really do much with the Ethereum NFT boom. I thought it was kind of stupid. When I came to Stacks and I started, I was like, well, there's not much here. Let me learn about NFTs, and then I come to recognize NFTs not as the picture that's on your screen, but it's actual, like, a proof of ownership of something,
Mm.
right? And that something can be many things, and we've this is still something we've yet to fully explore, even inside of crypto, because crypto has been so hamstrung by regulation. But the very first one might have been, I'd have to go back, but it was either a Seigel Explorer, or there's a old Peppy collection. Same artist that did the recent Bitcoin Peppy um, NFTs, and it was a Peppy that was dressed like Mario from Super Mario Brothers. I'm like, that is cool. It was either that one or the Seigel. The Seigel.
Yeah, I asked you because you were so famous
Yeah.
for, I mean, it's, you were saying earlier, you might call me Kitty. It's like when I have that, when I think of you, that is exactly what I think about. That PFP that was your PFP,
For
with the Can't
years.
Be Evil, and I just, that's how I got to know you as a writer, with in my mind, you have yellow skin, you have a Can't Be Evil tattoo over here, you've got a mohawk, and you're a writer.
Right, right, and
That was
yeah,
the Jack I knew.
Seigel was such an awesome platform. That
Yeah.
especially in the time where this is when, like, social media really started to crank up the censorship.
Mm.
And I tend to say what I think. So I've been suspended and so forth on Twitter so many times I've lost count.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, you know what, like, this is a good use of this technology to be able to write something, to be able to own that data, to own your writings, and nobody can alter them, no one can censor them. They're
Mm,
yours and they're
mm,
there. And I thought that was a really powerful concept. And at first I didn't fully know what to write about it. I knew that I still I like the idea of mentoring people, and I've been very privileged to be able to mentor some people in the space. That's one of the benefits of aging. Look, like, you don't know how long you have, but the longer that you're here, the more shit you learn, and
yeah.
you can help people with that. Um, so at first I was kind of struggling with what to write, and I was like, dude, there's no content creation in this ecosystem right now. There was very little.
You
There
legit were the first content creator on Stacks.
and
Like,
and so I was like, okay.
legit.
I saw Jake Blockchain had a podcast, and I'm like, that's just a regular dude podcasting about cryptocurrency. I'm
That's
like,
right.
I can do that.
Remember that.
So, but I'm not a podcaster. I'm gonna write, and I started, like, checking in with different teams from Stacks and so forth, and people were super accommodating, and I didn't know whether or not anyone was going to read anything I ever wrote or like anything I ever wrote. I had no idea, but like, the feedback was really good. So
Yeah.
I went on to write well over 100 articles on that platform. Um,
Yeah.
and
You're like my biggest competition. I
yeah,
would be like, I'm gonna nudge that dude out of my way. Fucking writer. Who does he think he is? I'm a writer.
there was like five of us at the peak.
I was like, yeah, me and my pseudonyms.
Yeah, and
Yeah, there was literally, it was so funny.
yeah, it
Oh,
was a lot of fun, and it was like,
yeah.
the last I checked with Leo, who was the developer for Seigel, he's still, like, doing stuff to the platform. It's coming
Mm,
back, and
yeah.
that's a beautiful thing, because
Yeah.
it's a great, like, right now when I write, I'll write on articles on X, and that's okay, but I don't really own that. Like,
Mm,
I'm sharing that with X. Like, I don't
mm,
like that. I like my stuff to be mine, and if I want to give that to someone, they should be able to have it.
mm. Yeah. Just want to say hi to Zero. Zero's in the house.
Just wrote an
Another one of,
article about Zero Authority Dial. It just
did
published
you?
it today. Yeah, yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Zero, and there's a handful of people who were very instrumental in like helping me get a better understanding of this space, and helping me grow in this space. And it'd be hard pressed to find two people more responsible than Zero and Hodl from Zero Authority DAO. And
Yeah.
I learned a lot from those guys,
Mm,
and it really helped make me better. And that's really what you want to do here, right? Like,
mm.
you want to get better, and that's not a linear journey, and that's not something that you can necessarily do in a bubble. um so yeah, that yeah that,
Yeah,
that's
shout out to Zero. He's that's another guy I think is just so way ahead of his time.
way ahead.
The yeah, some at some point somebody's gonna look at what they're building and be like, it's so obvious. It's why did everybody just, so it's there. We're gonna add to our analogy. So Bitcoin's the alphabet, Stacks allows you to speak, the network state
Is
allows you to read, and Zero, Sagil lets you publish what you can now read, and Zero Authority lets you get hired.
right. Yeah, it's
Or gives you reputation.
so
So
far so
it's
far
the
ahead.
economy. It's happening right here before us. I'm telling you, with our friends.
It's very true, very true.
Mwah. Love
Mhm.
you, Zero. Um, yeah. Okay. So, what a story. there's so much kind of that I wanted to talk to you about, but we've got to do it again,
No, 100%.
but yeah, so let's go along, because I just kind of want to get anybody watching sort of get to know the outer layer of the onion, and we will peel back the layers as we go through time together. Let's talk about Roo. When did that happen,
Um,
and how?
well, it's process that had been in the making for longer than most would realize. Ian is the developer of Roo. He's the guy who does all the coding, and Ian and I met in what was known at the time as the Stacks Startup Lab. I think now it's like the AI Startup Lab. I think they've changed their name a third time. Um, Unfortunately, during the startup lab, my wife had a weird illness that we thought she had cancer. We were going to the doctor. The doctor was ordering tests to check for cancer and stuff, and she was getting worse and worse. And the startup lab is it's very intensive, and I was having a hard time keeping up. Thank God we went and we got a second opinion, and I'm not going to say as luck would have it, because this is bigger than luck. That doctor had just had a patient die of something called Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever, which is a tick-borne disease. And she was like, "You've got the symptoms." And she ordered all of the tests, and some of them very specialized that you wouldn't just generally order. And it's like, turns out that's what she had. And it's a very, very easy treatment to fix it. But if you don't fix it, it's fatal.
And difficult to diagnose.
Very difficult to diagnose. It presents a lot like something like leukemia or lymphoma. So she started getting on the mend, and but during that time, I wasn't able to keep up well enough to, my head was in 500 different directions. Most importantly, like, I was just like, oh my God, like, what, please don't take my wife from me. But
okay. Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's all right, Jack. You know what? This is life. This is real life, and it's beautiful. So it just sounds like I think you've had such an experience in your life. Your life has been very full of
yeah, it has.
hectic moments. So I can understand.
But Ian and I wanted to work together. Like, we formed a friendship, we formed a bond. I liked the way he thought about things. He liked the way I thought about things. And so we started our own friendship. And one day he was like, "We're gonna launch something." I'm like, "Yeah, man." What? He's like, "Why don't we try to make like the best meme coin possible?" Like, it's just a complete experiment. A lot of people were talking about meme coins that were just starting to catch on. And I was like, that resonated with me. I'm like, yeah. I was like, that makes sense, because a lot of people like crypto. I like crypto. I don't like rug pulls. I've been rug pulled a million times. And we should have, people should have an option on the market to like be able to get involved with a meme coin and not have to worry about getting rug pulled. And like, so we started talking about what would a perfect meme coin, how do you establish that? How do you make that happen? And so that's how Roo was born. And it was massively successful at launch. At the time, Stacks was quite slow still. We had the 10-minute blocks. We completely shut the blockchain down for about a day with all transactions trying to be processed.
Oh my God.
And we took everything, that all of the STX that people that we raised went to the liquidity pool. We listed at Velar. We were the first meme coin to do so. because
I remember that.
through my
Congratulations.
oh yeah, through my journalism, I'd had a chance to meet the Velar team and do some interviews with them, write article, do a podcast or two. And I'm like, these guys are real. They know what's going on. We're going to launch with Velar for sure. And yeah, we took all the principles we thought would work, put it out there, and made a really cool community. And the community's still going. We didn't realize when we launched, we were basically launching at the top of Stacks. Nakamoto upgrade was supposed to be coming. It was delayed. So from there, just, we've never been back to the top. But the token had done quite well. Another thing we'd really wanted to do is to involve artists. Stacks has a lot of great NFT artists, as you know. And so it's like art, crypto is a cultural movement, and we want to have as many artists involved as want to be involved. So, we incorporated the artists, and we started making some cool stuff. It's been a lot of fun, and Roo's still going strong. And my goal is for it to outlive me,
And it will, I am sure. It's out there. People own bits of you everywhere, Jack. You are in the ether.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. I said that seems to be the case.
Yeah. Just thank you very much for sharing so intimately your story. I just want to say, before we kind of get lost in our conversation, I just want to say thank you for sharing those private moments with me and with us. Like I said to you, I feel like I know you so well. We've been through so much together, and yet we know so little of, and that's what's so important as well about the interviews that I'm doing here. So, for people to get to know that we are all people.
Right. And the thing is, like getting back to having a privilege of being alive and learning things. Not to just a couple days ago, we had someone, and he's never been in the Stacks ecosystem, but he's been a pretty big crypto personality for years, who is rumored to have taken his own life. Really? And so the reason I don't mind sharing is because people need to understand that no matter what happens to you, it's not over. As long as you're drawing air,
praise to that.
Not over. So
yeah. And what a thing, bravery as well. Can I tell you something as well? People look at specifically in the sort of, I think historically for men, it's not sort of strong to show your emotions or to admit that you might have, lost everything, had to start again, been down on your knees. It's not just women who get to those, dudes do it too, dudes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you've lived it all, it's easy to live and not face adversity if you're willing to not live. If you just stay sheltered and safe and it's like that guy Brian Johnson who wants to live forever. I think that's so funny because like at some point it continues, he's just going to be in a bubble, right? Because there's so many.
Didn't you see that thing? There was a thing of him he put on Twitter the other day, and he's in like some literally in a thing with a mask. In the thing, he's got a mask on, and it's like a Zoom call or a Google Meets or whatever they were doing. So there's like a whole bunch of people on the screen, and he's there, and he's like morning team meeting or something. And so many people commented on it. It's like he's in a bubble. Anyway,
like if you're a young person or a young man, especially, women have much stronger social connections than most men do. If you're a young man and stuff is going sideways and then it goes real bad, if you can get anything out of what I've said, it's simply, it ain't the end. Just get up, keep persevering, and keep going. Right.
Yeah. Today is the beginning of tomorrow, and let's just that's it, right? Yeah, like you say, when you've lived a bit, I've spoken to my assistant about it just the other day, saying, because she's obviously been with me through like, you know, a hell of a journey as well. She's known me for a very long time. And just saying to her, like, it's so weird how if I, and it's funny because I said to her, it's like the markets, you have to zoom out. Because
Right.
if I go back to those dark days and I kind of just put my fingers like this and look at it, it's terrifying. And you think to yourself, okay, that's it, it's tickets. And it's been a great lesson for me to teach my son, is to say to him, you've seen what happened to us from, you know, during COVID,
Right.
subsequently with me getting sick. You've been through, mom and dad, and you've seen us fight like you've never going to see people fight, you know, because marriages that lasted through COVID are another story.
Right.
But I
That's
said
true.
to him, you got to remember, dad and me are sitting here laughing our heads off, you know, together as best friends. We've been through that. So it's really about how you overcome adversity rather than the story of adversity. But I saw somebody say Roo with a question mark. Yes, it's Roo. Just to reset the room, it is ROOcoin. We're talking to the ROOcoin founder, Jackbinswitch, also the founder of Stacks Invaders, as well as Runes. That's an R with 10 zeros and an S.
Right.
How many fucking zeros? I don't know.
Yeah.
Thanks, Casey Rodemore with the 13. Okay, so yeah, so we kind of just for those that are listening, so Jack is the founder of Roo. It is an incredibly, I think to me, it opened my eyes from the difference from a meme coin and a community token, where there's a couple of them here on Stacks, right? Where this is not really, you know, meme is a huge cultural statement. It's an incredible art form, really moving forward. But I think this has a crazy solid community that you're building.
Even with you know, when we got started with the artists, GPSC was the first guy to answer the call, and he's been instrumental, especially in the Stacks Invaders art. And yeah, you're right, it's a whole cultural movement.
Yeah, totally. So right, so is there, I mean, I want to sort of talk about you know, obviously your relationship with Ian, and then, you know, the where you created the Stacks Invaders. But yeah, we're on time, right? We've got to move. How many minutes have you got left?
Oh, they're going to be, looks like they're going to start up now. We'll have to do this again. We'll have to have a
we will. I know the time just went by.
Sequel.
Yes. Again, on that note, I've still got like 19 more questions. I only got through the first page.
Yeah, we'll save them for the sequel.
Yeah.
We'll
all right.
Well,
the return of Roo. It's however many notes there are in Runes. That's how many episodes they're gonna be with Jack and I. We're gonna have our own podcast. All right. Well, guys, yeah. Please give Jack a follow on X, Jackbinswitch .btc.
Yeah.
So yeah, and find out more about, there's obviously ROOcoin as well, and there's Stacks Invaders. So there's a whole bunch to look into if you have just discovered Jack today. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me, for sharing this part of your story. I've loved it. I've loved chatting to you. I can't wait to do it again. I'll see you tomorrow on the Let's Go Morning Show. I'm sure of it. And then from my side, I'm Melanie Carstens, and this is Bitcoin and Beyond. A huge shout out to my partners in crime at Deorganized Media. Thanks to Peace Love behind the scenes for helping me out here today. And yeah, please pop in every Thursday, 12 p.m. ET for Bitcoin and Beyond. I'm Melanie Carstens. Thank you so much, Jack. I'll hopefully see you again next week.
It's been a lot of fun. We'll do it again soon. Bye-bye.
Look forward to it. Bye.